Shalom and welcome to Simchat Yisrael. In the Jewish calendar, we are now in the month of Elul, a season of preparation and readiness for the high holidays. Jews around the world are using this opportunity to spiritually refresh and renew ourselves as we head towards the new year. This week's Besorah portion is from the Gospel of John and tells the story of the Apostle Peter at a time in his life when he too was in need of renewal, and what Messiah Yeshua did for him in his time of need. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel down below. Peter is one of the most relatable characters in the Bible. He's not a paragon of virtue and perfection. He's a human being just like us. Peter is not as strong as he thinks he is. He's not as faithful as he'd like to be. And he is constantly making and learning from his mistakes. This story takes place after the resurrection. And you would think this would be a time of great joy for the apostles. But instead, it seems to be a time of spiritual uncertainty, especially for Peter. Peter had gone through the terrible trauma of seeing Yeshua crucified, and worse, he had denied the Lord on 3 separate occasions. Peter is feeling weak, guilty, and doubtful of his ability to sustain a ministry without Yeshua there to lead him. He had failed many times, had been rebuked many times, and he was unsure about his future and his commitment to ministry. And so, at the beginning of this story, Peter and some of the other disciples are kind of just milling about. They don't seem to have much direction or purpose right now. Finally, Peter breaks the silence with a simple declaration: I'm going fishing. Now, Peter may have just been hungry, but think about what we know about him. When we are first introduced to Peter, he is a fisherman by trade. Yeshua calls him to leave his boat and become a fisher of men. And from that moment on, Peter becomes a disciple of Yeshua. He learns at the feet of the greatest teacher that ever lived. He helped spread the gospel throughout Israel. He witnessed and performed incredible miracles. But now, Peter's story seems to have come full circle. He's gone back to what he knows. When Peter says he's going fishing, he isn't sure that he will ever come back. He goes out on his boat and he casts his net, and he catches nothing. All night long, not a single fish. Peter is a failure at everything. Enter Yeshua. Yeshua appears to Peter and the disciples from a distance, so they don't realize it's him at first. He calls to Peter and tells him to cast his nets on the other side of the boat, and gives Peter the biggest catch of his life. His nets are so full that they are near to breaking. This is probably the most success Peter has ever had in his fishing career. At that moment, Peter recognizes that it's Yeshua, and he's so excited to see his master that he forgets all about the fish that he worked all night for, and he leaps from the boat and swims for shore. Peter falls at his master's feet, and Yeshua must have been like, Peter, did you happen to stick a couple of fish in your pocket before you jumped over? Because I was hoping we could have some breakfast. The other disciples come in with the boat and the fish, and they all sit down to eat. And Yeshua asks Peter a strange question. Peter, do you love me more than these? What is Yeshua asking Peter? What are these? Most biblical interpreters say that Yeshua is asking Peter if he loves him more than any of the other disciples. But I have a different interpretation. I think Yeshua sat down opposite Peter, right next to the giant pile of fish, the biggest haul of Peter's life, and said, Peter, do you love me more than these fish? You have a choice in front of you, Peter. If you want, you can go back to the life of a fisherman, and you can take these fish with you. But I called you from that life once before, and now I am calling you again. Will you be a fisher of men? And Peter realizes that there can be only one answer. He can never go back to being a fisherman, not after all that Yeshua has shown him. But the conversation doesn't end there. Peter knows that he is called to follow Yeshua, but he still doesn't feel worthy. So Yeshua asks a second time, Peter, do you love me? And for the second time, Peter answers, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Peter, do you love me? And now Peter is distressed. Not long ago, Peter was asked the same question 3 times in a row. Aren't you the one who followed Yeshua of Nazareth? And 3 times Peter answered, I do not know him. Yeshua's 3-fold repetition is a clear reminder of his greatest failure. And Peter is forced to confront his sin. But this time, when Peter is being asked if he is a follower of Yeshua, he can answer, yes, you know that I love you. 3 denials replaced by 3 declarations of love. And Peter is restored. And then Yeshua gives a simple 2-word command to Peter that he will obey for the rest of his days. Follow me. As we journey through the month of Elul, we can learn from the lesson of Peter. Yeshua renewed Peter by forcing him to face his point of failure and challenging him to set his eyes on the work ahead. In the month of Elul, we are challenged to look within ourselves and find our own points of weakness and make them better. Yeshua redeemed Peter by giving him the opportunity to declare his love for him and erase the sins of the past. In this new year, God gives us all the opportunity to recommit to him and start over again. We all need renewal sometimes. Even the greatest run out of gas eventually. But we have a God who understands the necessity of renewal and a Messiah who gives us a path to be restored by his love. Shalom and thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe. And don't forget to visit simchatyisrael.org to learn more.